It's time for you to elevate your survivor gameplay. Today, I have 30 pro high MMR tips that should help you out in your matches. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump on into it. You need to know all your tiles in DBD. So I'm going to teach you guys about the most common tiles and almost all of them in the game right now. Let's go. The main building is the biggest structure on the map, always the same layout because you can't rotate or change the pallet spots. The Killer Shack is a common strong tile with long walls, a window, and an almost unavoidable god pallet. These standard and the filler tiles, you'll see these on most maps, which include loops, pallets, hills, trees, or other dead zone areas with a little cover. You have your edge tiles, which are the weakest tiles in the game's edge, and these are the Z or the U walls, offering little protection or cover. You have your straight and corner tiles. These appear on some maps featuring open roads with loops that are very strong with pallets, but weak without them. You have your exit gates, we all know what they are. And then you have all your different type of maze tiles. The basic jungle gym. These are the classic loops that you'll find on every single map, and then there's another variation with the short wall gym. The long wall has a window, the short one does not. You have your 4 lanes, which are basically 4 straight walls with gaps in windows. You have the inside variation that has window inside the tile, and then you have the outside variation with the window outside, which is stronger because it connects into other tiles. You have your classic T and L walls. The survivors need to run this clockwise for the fast vaults, and killers can counter this by running counterclockwise to block vaults. You have the pallet gym, which only has 1 pallet, no windows, and is weak once the pallet is gone. You have the trash pile gym, not because it's trash, it's actually one of the strongest jungle gyms with a long wall, a pallet, and a really good tile connection. You have your labyrinth or maze gym tiles. You'll typically find these on Yamaoka or Ormond only. They have 2 variations, the wolf pack variation with a window and a pallet close together, which is really strong, and the lone wolf variation with the window and pallet are far apart, which is weaker. You have the locker gym. You typically see these on Red Forest and Ormond. It has 2 sides, one with a pallet and one with many lockers. The double window gym. This has 2 windows and no pallets. It's weaker than the T and L walls due to the window placements. You have the variant gyms as well that has the C and Y shaped walls. The Y vault variant, the window is near the Y wall. The C vault variant, the window is near the C wall. And the pallets will always spawn on the opposite of the window. You have the small wall gym, aka the bad gym. It is the weakest gym in the game, made of short walls offering little to no protection. You typically see these on Auto Heaven. And then finally, you have a couple of dead dog gym variations. These are typically the ones, obviously, you'll see on Dead Dog. So these are some of the most basic tiles you'll see in DBD. I'll have a video in the future telling you how to properly loop these, but if you don't know every single one of these and how to optimally loop them, you need to start practicing. DBD maps are mostly random, so standard callouts don't really work. That's where clock callouts come in. We treat maps like a clock face using 1 to 12 as reference points. The main building is usually the 12 o'clock or the top of the map. The shack is often at 6 o'clock or the bottom of the map. Other key locations will be spread out based on the map layout itself. Some maps also have unique callouts like cow tree or bus, which help with navigation. In larger maps, you might add terms like mid, top mid, or bottom mid for open areas. This system helps your team stay coordinated, track the killer, and make better decisions, like when to go for a save or stick with a generator. Simple, effective, and game-changing. Typically, you'll only use these in your Swift, but if you're trying to get into the higher MMR lobbies and do better, you're gonna want to probably play with a Sif, because solo queue will be a nightmare. This one's a little bit boring, but it is true. Practice makes perfect. I'm not talking about regular practicing by just hopping in and playing a game of DBD. If you want to take your game to the next level, you need to run scrims. You need to run 1v1s. You can easily find people willing to play on both sides if you head on over to any Discord that offers competitive Dead by Daylight stuff. This is typically where you're going to learn a lot of different things. Just be careful because it can get pretty sweaty and pretty salty, so you need to be prepared. But that's one way you can take yourself to the next level. Fake vaulting. This is a simple but effective mind game that can buy you crucial extra time in chase. Now, I'm sure you all know about faking the vault, but we're gonna add a little bit of extra sauce to it. When approaching a window, if you don't look behind you, the killer is more than likely going to assume that you're fully committing to that vault. This can bait them into an early swing or double backing, and this will give you an opportunity to extend the chase a lot more. The key is to sell the fake by keeping your movement natural. If the killer believes you're going through, they'll react accordingly. You can use a key or a map with this trick as well. Survivors can manipulate their field of view using keys or maps. Holding one of these items allows you to look behind you without physically turning your survivor's body. This can be crucial for tracking the killer's movement, not revealing your intended escape route. Killers rely heavily on survivor body language to predict movement. This trick prevents them from reading you easily. The CJ tech. I'm sure you guys have seen and heard about this for a very long time, but this is something that you might see in the higher MMR lobbies that can definitely change your game. Essentially, all you need is a survivor down, a pallet, them being next to it, and a flashlight. The pallet is up and the killer notices you, so you can't really get the pallet save anymore. All you need to do is to continue to loop the pallet while the survivor is directly in it. You drop the pallet, either stunning or not stunning the killer, and the trick here is to vault the pallet as soon as the killer is going to break it. This will force them to get the pickup animation, and then you vault back over and get the flashlight save. If the pallet's already down, you can still do this. You just revault the pallet as soon as you're about to break it, vault back over, get the flashlight save. If done properly, there's pretty much almost no counter to this, and it can be quite devastating and a game changer. The locker CJ tech is an advanced variation of this, which involves someone being down near a locker, you essentially running into the locker and jumping into it. Essentially, the killer is going to try to open the locker to go and get you, and what you do is come on out at the very same time, forcing them to get the pickup animation. Now, this takes very precise timing to execute properly, but if done correctly, just like the CJ tech, there's not really anything a killer can do. As long as they're looking the right direction, you can get the flashlight save. Again, the window is extremely tight, making it one of the hardest techs to pull off consistently, but it's a game changer. The gate heal tech is something that is a pretty good strategy if you need to get somebody out of the gate that's currently down. So let's say a survivor is crawling at the exit gate and the killer's trying to pick them up. Instead, you just start healing them. What happens is the killer no longer has the ability to use the pickup button, forcing them to either hit you, which will then trigger the wiping animation, or waiting for the heal to be over. In either scenario, this buys you adequate amount of time because once they clean their weapon, the survivor can continue to crawl on out, or if they wait, the survivor more than likely will flip or have enough momentum while they're cleaning their weapon to continue to walk forward. You can even do this while you're injured if they're close enough to the exit gate and get somebody out very easily. Stealth is something that is extremely underrated in high MMR lobbies, and I've seen some fantastic plays. A lot of survivors like to actually hide in pretty devious spots. My friend DeathlyMarksman, who's probably one of the best survivors that I know, normally likes to hide in block generators. Since killers don't really expect any survivors to be near completed generators, it's an effective way to disappear mid-chase. Top tier killers don't waste any time searching in unnecessary areas, so once you break line of sight and you blend in near a block generator, most of them assume that you just ran away. I'll leave the link to Mark in the description down below, and a big shout out to him for also helping me with this video. Don't forget to play near your teammates when you're about to die or go down. Especially if you're on death hook or you're about to go down, running towards teammates forces the killer to reconsider going after you. This works effectively in a swift, but can also be good in solo queue. Essentially what you're doing here is spreading the chase pressure, so one person doesn't essentially get tunneled out or removed from the game completely. You ensure one single person isn't out early, and by doing so, it's exponentially harder for the killer to stop you when the late game comes. I want to interrupt really quick just to give a big shout out to Xidax. They have been absolutely amazing. Look, if you're looking for any awesome PCs, make sure you're clicking on the link in the description. They recently got the 5000 series, and you can actually get it at an affordable price there. Make sure you're using code KING as well for a massive discount. You guys know they obviously build my giant red beast, which is actually going to be getting a little bit of an upgrade, so I can't wait to see that. I just thought I'd give them some love. Taking killers to areas that are pretty much completed and done. Essentially like a dead zone, but not necessarily, because you still got your pallets, you got your vaults, but there's no generators in this area. Essentially, it's a area of the map where no one's at except for you. These are normally places to avoid, but in special situations, leading the killer here can be pretty strategic. If all the generators in the area are completed, dragging the killer to that dead area of the map keeps him occupied with a meaningless chase, allowing your team to freely work on generators. This is especially good if the team is in a 3-gen, because it forces the killer to make a decision. Do they commit to chasing to you, or do they go back and try to patrol the generators? You can combine that idea with the comp corner. This is a strategy that you sometimes see in competitive, and essentially comp corner involves running to the furthest possible corner of the map and then getting down. The tactic forces the killer to travel the longest possible distance before returning to their general patrol path, wasting crucial time. Again, this is pretty useful when going against a 3-gen setup and you're trying to break it. Pretty common, but using your check spots effectively. Check spots, in case you don't know, are safe areas. Typically, you see these on the corners of loops or by the shack, where you can temporarily pause to observe the killer's next move. This prevents running blindly into a bad position and lets you counter mind games very effectively. One thing I like doing is baiting the killers by going the other way. Once the killer loses a little bit of line of sight of you and they think you're going into one direction, they oftentimes try to cut you off and assume you're going that way. By faking your direction before breaking their vision and then double backing, you can waste their time and gain some free distance. Remember, any extra seconds that you're getting will help your teammate out, so this works out perfectly. Keeping track of the killer perks is super duper effective. Many killers in the game give their perks away quite easily. If you notice a gen exploding when a survivor is hooked, they got Scourge Hook Pain Resonance. If your Distortion perk loses a token immediately, you know the killer has Lethal Pursuer and probably some other aura reading perks. Learning these clues early and adjusting your gameplay to fit around it will help you exponentially. Learning the most used killers as well as the most used perks and add-ons are all key parts of information that you need to extend in your Survivor gameplay. This is something that will take experience, but you can always look through the wiki or a program like Nightlight in order to understand and learn what's commonly used. The quicker you can understand what's oftentimes being used for what killers, the quicker you can adjust your gameplay once again, which goes hand in hand with our previous tip. Now, a easy way to understand this more comprehensively is with our next tip. Play the other side. Look, I know this is a cheesy one, but I promise you playing the other side is something that is almost required if you want to get into those higher MMR lobbies. You just need to know crucial information that the killer knows when playing against the survivors. You can then use that information to balance up your survivor gameplay. Just don't fall in love with playing killer. That's what happened to me after 3,000 hours of playing survivor. I went to the other side finally at long last. It was so tough, I sucked so bad, and it was really embarrassing, and I wanted to quit so many times. Eventually, I kept on going, I kept on being persistent, and I got really good, and I never looked back for the next 5,000 hours of my DBD gameplay. But it is true. You'll learn little things such as the scratch marks, when someone falls down, the audio sounds that are made, when someone goes into the locker, the little tiny cues that killers can hear and how they're able to determine. You'll also see what the first-person view looks like and how you can benefit from using that angle. So play the other side at least just a few times, understand it a little bit, and to be honest, the more you play both sides of the game, the more you'll understand the mechanics, and that will help you significantly. This works on both sides as well. On the flip side, you want to hide your perks. Don't reveal them too early. Don't allow the killers to play around them. For example, if you're using something like Head-On, don't use it super early and just stun the killer whenever just because it's funny. Wait until you get into a crucial part of the match and maybe a teammate goes down by the locker, then you can get a big Head-On stun save and get them out there because the killer just did not expect anybody to have Head-On in a match. So hold on to your strongest perks for the key moments. Using your locker smartly. Listen, lockers aren't just for hiding. Against perks like Surge or a Leatherface or a Doctor, you can jump into a locker and can deny their power or their perks. Typically, again, tying into the previous one, if a killer has something like Surge and you're about to get knocked down, jumping into the locker will save all the generators from exploding. Against a Leatherface, this is kind of a last resort. Doctors, they're going to be constantly static blasting and shocking, so just jump into the locker. But you can use these lockers smartly, not just for hiding. One thing that's really good to do, especially if you're in solo queue, is using the HUD to track chases. The HUD literally shows you who's being chased and what's happening at any given time. If another survivor's in chase, you can safely work on a generator, set up a flashlight save, or position yourself for a good body block. Use that information even if the killer's right next to you and you hear a heartbeat and you're super terrified and you see someone's being chased, more than likely you're safe to work on that generator. So make sure you're using that HUD for all the information. So something to keep in mind whenever you're being chased and you're actively dropping pallets, here's the average statistics for high MMR chases. They typically last an average of 1 minute and 6 seconds on average, and only 1.6 pallets are used per chase. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean to greed your pallet. Sometimes you definitely have to be effective with them, but keep that in mind the next time you're in chase. Did this chase go longer than 1 minute? If it's over 1 minute, you're doing a very effective job as long as you're within that 1.6 pallet range, so 1 to 2 pallets per every single chase. Keep in mind that no matter what, you eventually will be getting down. That's why you have multiple hooks, so don't be discouraged if you do end up going down. Just know that your chase should be lasting on average 1 minute. And if so, you're doing your job correctly. Make sure you're avoiding 3-gen situations. Look, this one's pretty common, but it's still something that really plagues the high MMR lobbies. More often than not, this is one of the ways that I quite effectively win by just holding a very good 3-gen, and you're going to notice killers are going to try to ensure this happens as well. Some generators should be left for last to prevent killers from trapping you in any type of 3-gen. For example, on Greenville Square, the statue generator should just not be done whatsoever. There's a lot of examples like this throughout the entirety of the game, but these are just gens that if you pop them, you're more than likely going to have a really bad gen management situation. So keep it in mind the next time you jump on into a game and you just instantly run over to a gen. Speaking of, when you are working on a generator, make sure you're staying aware of your surroundings at all times. You typically want to always scan for an escape route, pallets, or vaults that you can use, and especially in early game when you don't know who the killer is, keep an eye out in case it is a stealthy killer. Make sure you're healing in safe spots and knowing when to not heal. Healing is important, obviously, but doing it in the wrong place can definitely lead to a disaster. If you just got unhooked, don't heal right there unless there's 2 people there to make a fast heal. Instead, move to somewhere safe where the killer can't immediately snowball the pressure. Most of the times, killers are always going to go back to the hook. Additionally, know when to not heal. For example, if you're playing against a Legion, healing is oftentimes pointless since they can reapply deep wounds so easily. On the other hand, if you're playing against someone like the Oni, you want to always heal to prevent them from building up their power. One thing that I learned from the killer side is that altruism kills. It is one of the biggest mistakes survivors make. It's just being too altruistic. It's my favorite saying, altruism kills, and it's true. If a survivor's hooked far away from the exit gate in the end game, and it's a camping Leatherface, it's not worth saving them whatsoever. You can cut your losses and leave rather than throwing the entire game. A small but crucial detail that survivors oftentimes overlook is stopping gens from regressing. If a generator is regressing, even if there's a hooked survivor nearby, go on the generator, work on it for a little bit to stop the regression. This is especially important in 3-gen situations where keeping the gens from losing their progress forces the killer to stay on their toes. They don't actively know if you're working on that generator, if you're around, or what the deal is. Since you can no longer just gen tap them, make sure you're staying long enough to actually work on them to stop the progress from being lost. Do not waste your time on chests or dull totems. It's completely useless. If you need an item, bring an item in the game. It just wastes valuable time that you really shouldn't be doing. Cleansing dull totems is also unnecessary. In the higher MMR lobbies, you're not going to see things like Know It. It just doesn't necessarily happen. Sure, once in a blue moon you might see it, but realistically you're just wasting your time. And if someone has a boon in your match that you may not have known, you could potentially be screwing them over if you just hop on a totem. A lesser known strategy that is sometimes used on competitive play is not triggering the chase at all. If you don't run while being pursued, sometimes the game doesn't register that you're actually in chase, meaning you can get an extra window vault before the entity blocks it. This allows you to loop the same structures almost indefinitely at times. I've had games where I'm literally at the shack chasing someone as a slower moving killer and they end up looping the shack vault 6 different times. It's ridiculous. While this requires some precise timing and it's a little hard to pull off, when done correctly, it will literally drastically extend your chases and make the strong loops even stronger. If a teammate or yourself are on the hook, you don't need to immediately go for the save or request for someone to pull you off ASAP. You have 60 seconds before you go into the second state. So, survivors can work on generators. This is adequate amount of time to get some good progress. It takes 90 seconds for a generator to be completed, so if everybody splits up, which is the most effective strategy that you can possibly do, they all work on generators, you'll be 2/3 the way done with generators, and then someone goes in for that save. Now, killers, when they notice that someone's about to go in second, will typically stick around to ensure that happens. This is where you can easily just trade or try to pull off a good play in order to swap. Obviously, if there's a save that's super easy to get, you can do it, but if you want to max minute, this is the way you're going to have to do it. The final thing is have fun. I know, very cheesy. At the end of the day, Dead by Daylight is just a game. If you lose, move on to the next match. Getting into the higher MMR lobbies or trying to get good as the top tier players take time and experience. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. These tips will definitely help you improve, but ultimately, nothing beats practice. Enjoy the process, keep learning, and most importantly, have fun with everything. Dead by Daylight is such a unique game where even after 1,000 hours or 2,000 hours, you still might not be good at the game. You still might be understanding the basics. It is a lot to take in as a new player, and that's why I'm really pushing for more tutorials and more things for newer players or players that are still trying to learn and improve their gameplay, but at the end of the day, have fun. If you get tilted with this game, it's really going to be super difficult to continue to enjoy it. You'll be frustrated with so many things and you would blame it on balancing, when realistically, there are players that are at the higher MMR lobbies, at the really good lobbies, that effectively play and do well. That's why you see these massive escape streaks. So while some things might be out of wonk and some things definitely need to be balanced a little bit more, at the end of the day, if you keep cool, calm, and collected, you keep on practicing, eventually you will keep rising in those ranks. But those are my 25 plus tips that I have for you guys. In hindsight, a lot of them seem pretty bland, a little bit boring, but realistically, that's all it really is. The most important things to do is to understand your tiles and chain your loops properly, extend your chases longer than 1 minute, and in certain crazy situations, some of these tips might come and help you apply. The goal is to max-min everything. If you can effectively play as your team, get some momentum going, and don't let the killer snowball, you'll typically win most of your matches. Let me know what you guys think down below, if these tips helped you or not. I might make a video in the future asking the top survivor mains what their tips are, and then share those with you guys. As always, I'm the king. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.